Welcome to Everything Sociology 24. If you're passionate about exploring human society, cultural evolutions, and historical perspective, you're just in the right place. My name is Ode Agbaka Godwin, and today I want to give a brief introductory class on African society and culture. Now, African society and culture is a vast, dynamic, and deeply rooted course that reflects Africa as a continent, right? Its rich history, because Africa as a continent itself has diverse cultures, languages, and etc. So if you're ready, I'm also ready. Let's get right on into it. Most scientists or paleontologists, they refer to Africa as the cradle of humanity or civilization. That is, it is the genesis, it is the beginning. It is the birthplace of humankind, where some of its earliest human fossils have been discovered. For instance, in ancient Ethiopia, the present Ethiopia as it is, some paleontologists or anthropologists, they actually excavated a site and discovered a fossil, and which was named Lucy, right? But beyond its ancient past, ancient Egypt, ancient Ethiopia, ancient Sudan, right? Africa is home to a wide variety of cultures. I'm a Nigerian. In Nigeria, we have different traditions. We have over 500 plus languages and our diverse belief system that sets us apart. About 53 or 54 countries in Africa, they have their indigenous culture, their indigenous belief system that have evolved over time, and it keeps changing from a particular generation to another. Before the colonial era or pre-colonial era, African society, which was wide, they were largely communal in living. And then with its social structures, it was built around kinship and lineages. Now, families and clans, they formed a foundation of governance with elders. Elders, they actually played a pivotal role, a central role in decision making. So in ancient Africa, or before the advent of colonialism in Africa, the elders, they played an important role. They still do, in a certain form of capacity in which they can execute their power in terms of conflict resolution too. And then in conflict resolution itself, they also maintained a sensibility of social order. For instance, in the Igbo society of Nigeria, its governance was acephalous or decentralized, right? It relied on councils of elders and age grade system, the Ofo title holder, the Ozo title holder, and etc. Even in South Africa, in the Zulu Empire, the Zulu Kingdom in South Africa, right? They had a highly organized military-based governance, and they had prominent leaders such as Shaka Zulu. I'm sure we've heard of Shaka Zulu. In this regard, African society also maintained a certain strong relationship with their natural environment, their social milieu. So many indigenous African belief system, they revered nature. Nature was a principal thing to them before the advent of Christianity. And then they practiced animism. Animism is a belief that spirits actually exist in plants, in animals, and even inanimate objects. In Benin Republic, for instance, they actually practice voodoo, right? And then they actually have those objects in which they pay some certain form of allegiance to, some certain form of reference to. Economically, traditional African societies also thrived on subsistence agriculture that could provide for the family unit, which was actually large at that point in time. Individuals actually had a large number of children or offspring to assist them in their farming, in hunting, in fishing, and craftsmanship. Markets were also local with trade by barter system in place. Now you have salt, you exchange it for maybe palm kernel fruits and etc. Exchanging goods was actually in vogue at that point in time. Take, for instance, the transatlantic slave trade, now which connected West Africa to that of North Africa through trade in gold via Ghana, Upper Gold Coast, Volta region, salt and textiles, some of those goods in which they sold. Now, the powerful Malian kingdom, right, which was headed by Mansa Musa, he became one of the wealthiest men in the whole world. And then his state then was very, very rich due to its control, right, or monopoly over gold production. Everything changed with colonialism, which peaked in the late 19th century and the early 20th century before it was abolished. European powers, the French, the British, and etc., they imposed foreign governance, and then that particular form of governance, either indirect through or policy of assimilation, it disrupted indigenous economies of West African countries and African countries in general, and it also altered our social structure. So one major disruption was the cash crop economy, where African farmers, they were forced or made to cultivate crops from cocoa, from cotton, from coffee for export, right, rather than for local consumption. So this particular practice replaced our traditional livelihood, and it introduced economic dependency. And at this point in time, colonial rule, right, also brought about forced labor. For instance, in the Belgian Congo, for example, it saw an extreme exploitation under King Leopold II, where millions of Congolese, they were actually decapitated. Y'all need to watch a documentary about that, right? Like those individuals that were quite stubborn or they were rebels, right? They were like various parts of their bodies were actually cut off. And then they were forced into labor for rubber extraction. And then culturally also, the missionary activity spread Christianity as we have it today, and which led to a decline of indigenous religion, our traditional religion, while Western education also helped in modernization. It also alienated many Africans from their cultural heritage, their traditional heritage. After the independence of many African countries, in the 1950s and 60s. For instance, Ghana had its independence in 1957 and Nigeria had its own independence in 1960. African societies, they continue to evolve, and then this singular act helped to balance the colonial legacy with modern influences. Today, globalization and technological advancement to a very large extent is actually helping to reshape our cultural practices. For instance, traditional music like Afrobeat, which was pioneered by Fela Anikulapo Kuti, may so rest in peace, they've merged with contemporary global sound, right? We have exports such as Davido, Burna Boy, Thames, and etc., who have actually taken this sound to the global scene, and it has brought it to the limelight, right? And then fashion trends too has also helped the foreign world to come to know our traditional attire, such as dashiki, such as kente cloth, with modern styles, right? In the fashion world, we are there. Entertainment world, Africans are everywhere. Moreover, many African nations or countries are working tirelessly to reclaim their cultural heritage. For instance, in Nigeria, amongst the Benin, right, they are actually demanding for the return of stolen artifacts, right, such as the Benin bronzes, which were taken during the colonial rule or the colonial era. That is our heritage. That is our culture. It is our artifact, and we are meant to protect it and guard it with all diligence. And that's all we have today on Everything Sociology 24. Take note of this. African society remains dynamic and it will continually change and adapt to new influences while preserving its heritage. So as we look ahead, the continent's ability to embrace modernity or various form, let's have it in mind that Africa will still remain one. Any form of division or neo-colonialism needs to stem from our understanding that we have a particular heritage to preserve. Right? So that's why we need to awaken from our slumber, right? We need to enlighten ourselves to know that our culture is not inferior as compared to that of the Europeans who actually came and then they took a bite of it. Once again, my name is Ode Agbaka Godwin and thank you for watching. So until we meet again, be curious.